Okie dokie. All right. Hello, this is Krista with thelifeinprogress.ca, and I'm really happy to be here with Kathy Gottberg. We're going to be talking about handcrafting a right-sized life or right-sized living. And I'll read Kathy's bio in a second, but I am going to start with this. I started following her years ago. I don't know how many years, but that she is the point of origin for this idea of right-sized living. I sometimes use that term, but that she is the originator of that, at least for me. So I'm so happy to be here with you. So Kathy is a writer, an optimist, adventurer, curious, lifelong learner, and a person who loves life. Through 7 published books, hundreds of articles, and her passion to keep learning, she explores ideas and experiences that help to create a meaningful, sustainable, compassionate, and rewarding life for herself and others. As I mentioned, I found her work over at smartliving365.com years ago, and specifically her writing around the topic of right-sized living. And in my membership this month, we're talking about right-sized living. So I'm just grateful that you are a guest with us and that, you know, my community members get to learn from you, Kathy.
Well, I am delighted to be here. And when you first reached out and asked me about talking about right sizing, I mean, it's one of my favorite topics. If you invited my husband, who I do in concert with my husband, you can barely get a word in edgewise because we love talking about right sizing and all the great things that it's done for our life and why we're such fans. So thank you for inviting me. It is truly, related to your blog, A Life in Progress. It is a life in progress, and right sizing is a progress thing. It's not like, whoop, I arrived and now I'm the queen of right sizing. No, it's honestly a constant choice that I think we need to make. So yeah. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk about it in case you can't tell.
I do feel your enthusiasm. I care a lot about the idea of seasonal and sustainable living, and like in our outer world and in our communities and with our resources, but including our resources, which are time, money, gifting, energy, all of that, and the truth that as we move through the seasons of life, life will shift, it will ebb and flow, and this isn't bad, and it's not to be feared. And really, I feel like I'm coming into my deepest work only now, I think, on the cusp of 50, and I'm really excited for the next years of my life, and that I get to explore this even more and live it. And I'm always looking for examples of those who are ahead of me on the path of it and walking out their values. And you probably just didn't know that for a long time, but I was watching you. And one of the reasons is that I don't feel like when you talk about things, Kathy, that you never bypass, you don't shy away from complexity or like deep, hard things in our world, whereas some of the talk online about and this isn't meant to be critical so much as I need something else. And so sometimes it stays superficial, the talk around these things. And, but I don't want to turn away from poverty and grief and trauma and, that we all have limitations in our lives and all of that. Because I feel like it's juicy and exciting when we can just tell the truth about all of this.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It's some of the most important conversations that we can have. So I totally get that. I know that you are kind of into the Enneagram. And I think one thing that kind of helps explain the way I approach it is my number. I actually didn't even come across the Enneagram until probably a year ago or a little over a year ago. And I was listening to a podcast. I mean, I'm curious, like you're always curious. I can tell you're a curious soul. And it's like, I just listened to all kinds of different things. And somebody said Enneagram. And I was like, oh, here's a free test. I went, took the test, and I go, oh my God. I couldn't believe how it explained especially the motivations behind some of my decisions. It
Right.
doesn't, I don't think it defines me. I know some people have said, oh, it puts you in a box and you're only that. And it's like, no, no, no. I don't buy into that. I buy into what's in it that maybe will help me learn more about myself.
Yeah.
And when I saw my number, it's probably no surprise when you read my intro, it's classic 7. I'm classic 7. I'm an optimist. I love life. I'm open and curious and, talkative. And I'm a lot, I was going to say I'm a little FOMO, but it's probably true to say I'm a lot FOMO. You know what FOMO is, right?
Yes, I do.
So I'm always,
In case somebody else doesn't know what we're talking about.
okay, FOMO is fear of missing out. I'm always like, what's out there? I don't want to miss a thing. And actually it was a much more of a struggle for me when I was younger. I tried to do everything possible. And sometimes I literally wore myself out running around like a crazy woman. The best thing is I have a 8 wing. I don't know if you've gone into any of that wing business, because I always wondered about why I could get so passionate about injustice. If I see something that I think is clearly wrong, I see people being harmed or, any kind of injustice that you can pick any one of them. I can get really passionate and incensed about that. And my husband, who happens to be a 9, which actually is like the best counterbalance for me because he's actually more like, he calms me. Now, sometimes I don't want to be calmed, but he is calming to me. And he's also much more present than I am. So he pulls me into the now a lot more. And anyway, since we learned about our numbers on the Enneagram, it really has been very helpful for both of us for, seeing what motivates me, seeing, why I'm constantly, even when I came across the Enneagram, I loved it. I read and listened to like 1,000 podcasts and read all these articles and all kinds of stuff. And then, a week or 2 later, I was on to something else.
Right.
That unfortunately is part of my problem. I have to, slow myself down to
Right.
really, keep digging. Because there's part of me that wants to get to the real heart of matters. Not just, like you said, not just the superficial. Not that there isn't a time and place for that. But with my writing and my closer conversations, that's not where I prefer to go. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it totally makes sense. And I love Enneagram talk.
Oh, do you? Oh, good. Well, we could probably go, for an hour on that, right? But I'm no expert. I just read a bunch of stuff and it really has proven itself in my life.
Yeah, me too. For me too. I highly recommend it. And, if it comes up a lot in my conversations, and if somebody's interested in learning where to find more, reach out to me at alifeinprogress@outlook.com. I can give you a couple book ideas or podcast ideas where you can kind of start diving in to explore this for yourself.
Yeah.
So I did want to ask you about your wiring and your personality and how that impacted how you show up to life. And we've chatted about the Enneagram. I would also like to just ask, just to help me connect with you and kind of allow us to get to know you a little bit better, what are you excited about in this season of life?
Honestly, the thing I'm most excited about is travel. I feel I've really been held back because of it, because of COVID. We're careful, my husband and I. We don't have any children, so there's not that. I really see travel as part of my adventurous nature. I love seeing new things and going new places and exploring. And so with COVID, it's made it obviously way more difficult. So now that the vaccine is getting closer, I am 65, my husband's 67. So we qualified to get vaccinated. I actually know friends and people close to me that were lucky enough to win the lottery. That's what we're calling it here. To manage to get the appointment early, is really cool. And so I'm excited about getting that. And I'm excited about getting back in the world because there is a sense, I don't think I felt it maybe until 60, certainly at 65, that I'm not going to be here forever. Nobody is here forever. And you can't take any of that for granted. And I don't want to. It's like, I figure we got at least a good 20 years we can keep traveling, but 20 isn't that many when you really start looking back and going, oh, 20 years ago, I thought I had everything. And now it's like, 20 years.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what's exciting me the most. I do constantly have little projects. Like I said before we started the show, I'm working on an audiobook. I have plans for another book to publish this year. I would really like to do that. So I keep myself occupied when I'm not traveling. But once those gates are open, I'm not sure. I have a very consistent blogging schedule. I blog once a week, almost religiously. And that has kept me sane in many ways, having that kind of a practice. It's a practice to me. It's like a meditation learning practice for me. But like I said, I don't know once the gates are open where I'll go. I just like I've already booked places to go.
Have you?
They're refundable, but I have booked places. So yeah.
We love travel too. And we're very eager to get back to travel. And our next destination is Nova Scotia, exploring the eastern country of Canada. Our country is so beautiful. I am so grateful that I've been able to visit some different places in the States. And yeah, we're just eager to start living fully again in that respect. And I really agree. My husband's 10 years older than me. And I do reflect, and my mom died at 53, my dad at 63, my son died. And it's just like all of that. It just, it's just that reminder. It's just like live while you have this day, enjoy it. And not in a morbid sense or even an anxious sense at all, just realizing that this is a privilege and a beautiful one. And we want to breathe it all in and savor and taste and explore and meet people in different corners of the world. And yeah,
all of that. Well, and I know it's early on the agenda, but actually that's one reason why we right size. That was such a motivation behind right sizing in our life. The ability to travel and to do it the way we wanted to do it with a lot of freedom, to do it with a little bit of luxury. We're not extravagant people, but we wanted to be able to easily afford that and feel comfortable in retirement. Although we still don't consider ourselves retired. My husband still works and I still do writing and blogging and that sort of thing. But right sizing was kind of our pathway without even realizing it in the very beginning. It just led to a lifestyle now that is so wonderful that at least for us, again, well, I'll get into the whole definition of what right sizing means.
Why don't you do that? Yeah, why don't you just dive on in and explain that? And then maybe as you explain it, you'll be able to share a little bit about the evolution of your understanding of it or how it's shifted for you.
Well, that's almost, it's almost easier to explain how we kind of stumbled onto the word and the idea and where it came from and how it actually transformed us. In the first place, my blog is Smart Living 365, but a lot of people think smart, we mean like, oh, we're so intelligent. That is not what smart means. It's an anagram. I'm losing the word. You know what I mean? Where you use the letters.
S stands for something.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, S stands for sustainable. Okay. M stands for meaningful. A stands for aware. R stands for right size. Originally, it was responsible. Oh, thank you. Melissa just told me it's an acronym. Thank you, Melissa. That's the word I was searching for. And then the last word, T, is thankful. So when I started this blog, I'd actually been doing another blog before I got going with it. I wanted a word that kind of was broad enough that I could write about things that were near and dear to my heart. And those 5 things pretty much summarized everything. And we had some thoughts and ideas about sustainability in our life, and sustainability really related to the environment, how we wanted to live in the world, how we wanted to take care of the world, and why it's so needed in our world today. But then we both have a background in real estate. We're both licensed brokers. My husband, like I said, he's still active in commercial here in Southern California. And we hit 2008 when the whole economy was kind of blowing up in the housing crisis, at least here in the US. You guys were smarter than us. So at the time we sat down and we said, we were living in a very nice home. Up to then, we had kind of been climbing the ladder, climbing the success ladder here in the US. Yes, we had a beautiful home. We had 3 cars. And remember, we have no children. So it was just the 2 of us in this house that wasn't enormous. It was 2,400 square feet, but far larger than the 2 of us needed, and our dog. And we had a beautiful swimming pool and backyard. I mean, it was kind of like, okay, we looked at that house and said, this is a house I'm super proud of because it's beautiful. It was beautiful. But then you had to furnish it, and then you had to take care of it. And so 2008 came, and it wasn't that we were over mortgaged. We were pretty frugal, and we were careful about that. But we just started saying, our incomes, chances are, especially my husband's income, was going to drop. Maybe we should be a little bit more mindful about our resources. And do we really need this property? And then we started looking at our swimming pool, and we were like, we get into it a couple of times a year. It's awfully expensive to have that beautiful thing sitting out there. It's nice to look at, and when it's hot here, it's the desert. We live in the desert. It's hot here, but we like to get out of here. We like to travel during the summer and get away from the heat. So we're really not even using that thing. And here we live in this house. We got 4 bedrooms. There's 2 of us, and we sleep in the same room. It's kind of silly. So when we sat down and really budgeted how much we actually were using, how much that house was costing us, and what was this all about? We just decided, why don't we just sell this house and start looking around for a house that's smaller and less pricey? And at the time, we didn't even really know it. But when we sold our house, we got out. We lost some money, but not dramatically like some people. And like I said, it wasn't overly mortgaged, so we had some equity. We found a little house that I thought was probably too small, which maybe to Canadians is not. It was 1,400 square feet. So we went down 1,000 square feet. And because we had this money from our old equity, we could pay in cash and pay it off, completely pay it off. So we had no mortgage. And then
you were in your 30s then?
Pardon me?
Were you in your 30s?
No, this was only 2008. This was only like 13 years ago.
Oh, okay. I thought it was way back in the 80s, like when you, okay.
No, we were late bloomers. You're so far ahead of where we were. The thing was, again, see, we were both self-employed. At the time, we did have health insurance, but we didn't have health insurance for many years. And here in the US, that's a problem. We finally got health insurance. And like I said, we were climbing the ladder, and we thought we were doing what everybody does, and it looks good, until we realized, okay, it doesn't mean that much to us. It's not that important to us. We'd rather be done with this, and maybe we could travel more. And that was kind of planting little seeds in our heads. So by the time we figured out everything that we could easily do without, and this new house that we could buy and fix it up the way we wanted. I mean, we weren't like being stingy about it. We fixed it up and made some improvement. We put solar on it. We did lots of environmental things that we thought were very, very important. So basically, we have a low water yard. We have solar for our electricity. We have gas, hardly. So our utility bills are incredibly low. And so when we figured it all out, this was 12 years ago. 12 years ago, when we compared our budgets, we were saving approximately $32,000 a year by living in this new home.
Wow, that's significant.
And see, at the time we had very little savings for retirement. So we were early 50s. We had, because we've been self-employed, we had a few properties because we're in real estate. So we had a little bit of kind of cushion for retirement, but we had no savings. We had very little. But all of a sudden here we easily had over $32,000, and it's more now. I'm pretty sure it's at least 35 that we're saving by living here. We just started socking away the savings. and we suddenly felt free to travel more, to do the things that we want. And we also sat down and started making lists of what is it we really want? What really brings us joy? What really brings us contentment? What adds meaning to our life? And it wasn't that house. It wasn't 3 cars. God knows who needs 3 cars for 2 people. I mean, that's just ridiculous when you look. And yet we do that. We slip into the old mode of just thinking more is better. And our experience was, no, let's start cutting back. And it becomes addicting kind of in a way when you start doing it and you realize how freeing it is. My husband, that was one of the biggest things he said. He said he had no idea being completely debt-free would be so freeing, to feel like suddenly he was the major breadwinner. I was the writer, the creative, he gave me that freedom, but he didn't have that freedom himself. And so when suddenly both of us had the freedom to just say, no, we don't have to do that. We can do it this way. And that's kind of where it was born.
So right sizing is really, it sounds like, about being honest or telling the truth about who we are, what season of life we're in, what we need and want, right? Separate from all the conditioning and all the ways we used to think we should be and whatever, or even pretending, I think, that our reality isn't this, because I feel like not always, but sometimes we get into, we put ourselves in unhealthy situations because we don't want to accept the truth of our limitations, whatever that might be,
Right.
And as soon as I think that when we tell the truth about our limitations, so to speak, all of a sudden we can see the possibility around what we do have and what we can do, and how we could use our resources in a creative, different way. So
and also kind of playing off that, it's like when we moved out of that house, we had a number of people, including family members, they'd get us aside and say, is everything okay? Are you guys okay? Implying because we got off that treadmill that all of a sudden something was wrong and we had to do this and we had to sell the house and we had to downsize. And that's, what happened is everybody's, why are you downsizing? And I was like, right sizing, the actual word came out of real estate. That's kind of where why we started using it, because there was all this downsizing in business where they were going in and raping and pillaging big companies and selling the assets and then walking away with the money. I don't know if you remember that wonderful corporate thing. But then they used right sizing to kind of make it sound softer. Well, we like the word right sizing, downsizing, not so much, because we always felt right sizing was a step towards something instead of something running away from something.
Right.
It's choice. It's making positive choices in your life.
Yeah. And what I really like about that too, Kathy, is I try to live a values aligned life. And so it's when we do that, we're less judgmental about each other also, because there are people who want that big home. And one of my local friends, they have adopted so many babies, and people, they have this big, beautiful, bustling home, and they have need of space in a way that I don't. And it's not good or bad. It's just, is it values aligned? Is it working for us? Is it, and I love that, because again, I think in some conversations we can gloss over some of this sifting that we all need to do, where we have competing tensions and desires, and we start to become more self-aware and even love ourselves more deeply, which then allows us the freedom, right? To say, oh yeah, I don't want to carry this stuff anymore. And I find that's definitely a process. I feel as we cycle through life, but I feel midlife is prime real estate for this type of work. Would you?
Well, obviously, obviously, so do we, because that's a big time when we started asking ourselves those questions about, okay, here we are, mid 50s. This is definitely probably more than halfway through. What's the rest of our lives going to look like? What choices are we going to make? But you point out such an important thing, and that is the fact that everybody's lifestyle is different, because we are all different. But the thing is, I don't think we're taught, and I don't think we often take the time to sit and analyze or become self-aware. Self-awareness is one of my big things.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, even the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's like, it's better to me to know my, what's behind my choices than to walk blindly through life. And right sizing just raises questions. It's like, okay, Krista, what's important to you? Are you living that way? What choice did you make today that supports that? And what choice maybe you made that didn't support that? I don't think, I'm not convinced not everybody asks themselves those questions.
I don't think so. I think a lot of people move through life on autopilot or just surviving, and and I think sometimes there's some choice involved, but a lot of times people don't, know even that they can do this. Like there's sometimes in my work where I present an idea, and some of the beautiful women I get to work with say, wait, what? Like we can do that? You can give yourself and do whatever the heck it is that you need to do. But okay, I'm just looking at my notes here. So I'm going to skip ahead and to our one of our next talking points here. I want to talk about what seasons of life we're in. I love to write about seasonal living. I'm writing about it right now, and I am in a winter season, undoubtedly, and I can feel little glimmers of hope and possibility, and like little seeds that are starting to sprout that tell me that spring will come again. And author Sarah Avant-Stover, I'm trying to think, she has a couple books out, and one of them is The Way of the Happy Woman. I think her other one is called She, or something like that. She teaches that the medicine for winter is rest. And I would like to add that I think the gift of winter is freedom. So winter often invites us or thrusts us into seasons of transition that are really hard. And it's really hard work here. And I feel deep down into my bones that somehow in these darker, harder, colder seasons, freedom, we make space for freedom to really start to speak in our lives. Because I think, and I don't know all the things, I haven't thought it all out yet or figured it all out in my own brain, but I think one of the reasons is that winter is a time of stripping us bare, where we don't have anything left in us for pretense or bullshit or status quo or trying to measure up and keep up and please other people at this, while our own souls are like dying or screaming out to be heard. So I guess I'd like to talk about that. Like, have you ever lived that? What do you feel or think about that? Is that something you do think about, like the seasons of life and the gifts maybe in every season?
I've never, I read that on your blog, and when you talked about the season and seasons of life and that sort of thing, and part of it resonates as a truth. I don't specifically think of that I have lived that way or that I've thought about those things, except that I do write now. Ever since I hit 60, I started writing about positive aging. And actually one of my books is on positive aging because it's becoming surprisingly more relevant to me. So, I can't remember the author that I read it in, but he basically talked a lot about seasons. If you think of your life as different seasons. And one of my favorite seasons has always been autumn. So I tend to think of autumn as a very favorable thing. Here in the desert Southwest, it's always good to be in the autumn because that means you made it through another summer, which is brutally hot and not very comfortable. And so autumn is a nice time, but it's also getting closer to the idea of winter. So in aging, there's definitely some work that can be done around seasons. As far as being in winter, it's funny because where I live, this is our best time of year. So it tends to be, the weather is pretty nice. It's been a little chilly for us, which you'd laugh at. But it's nice. We can get out, we can be very active, and that's when we do get outside and enjoy ourselves here. So winter to me means something very different, I'm sure, than rest. Although 2020 and the year of COVID has definitely put rest at the forefront, I think, for us personally. And then just to piggyback on that idea, like your post today was really nice. I really like that idea. Just about pausing and breathing and holding the space. And I mean, lots of good ideas there. And the one idea that really spoke to me was, as a 7, as the kind of personality that I am, that I'm very future oriented. It just comes to me extremely naturally, which is good when I'm dealing sometimes with grief or hard feelings, good and bad, because sometimes I can escape them a little too easily. But I'm also just kind of always looking forward. And your blog post reminded me that's like, no, they say one of the best things a 7 can do is to be present, to learn to be present and pull themselves back. I spend way too much time up here, and I'm trying to honor my body wisdom a lot more at this stage. So that's a long answer to your question, but those were thoughts. Yeah, those are thoughts.
Thank you. And I mean, I do want to touch on, because I don't know what to do about this in my writing, but I can see how where we grow up and like our environment, like, right now it's like, it's winter and this big tree out front is stripped bare, and it's all the birds, it's full of waxwings, and we get deer, white-tailed deer come right up to my living room window, and they all come and eat like the old shriveled, they're little apples, but they look kind of like big berries from my tree. And it's just, I love it so much. And I feel like there's so much wisdom for me when I just watch, when I listen and I make space for noticing and trusting that things aren't supposed to stay the same, and it's okay. But if you live in California, your experience is so different. How do you compare? I find that fascinating. Yeah.
But the metaphor is still very powerful. Yeah. Definitely very powerful. But it's different what triggers you to write. It's interesting. I mean, that's part of the joy of writing, because it's different every day. It's different every week. You just don't know.
Yeah. And one of the beautiful parts, I think, of community and engaging with other people and sharing our own stories and listening to each other, right? Because there's so much I learned that I would never have occasion. Like, how could I understand things that I haven't seen? And you can share through your experience. And it just reinforces this need that, like, this idea, this truth that we need each other. We need each other. We need to share our resources in a way that like lifts up families and communities, I think, and honors diversity in all different forms, because I think we're stronger then, right? And not just stronger, but actually more vibrant and creative. And so what's something that has surprised you in your life, Kathy? Or what's something you've learned about yourself, like maybe just in the last couple of years, that you didn't know before?
Well, the first thing that pops in my mind is the Enneagram, how revealing that was. I'd done Myers-Briggs. I don't know, maybe it's part of my nature to be attracted to taking personality tests, because I think you mentioned it somewhere in your writing or something. I'm fascinated by why people do what they do, including why I do some of the things. I'm like, why did I ever do that or go down that road? And I think so the Enneagram really opens some awareness to me. I may be surprised that I got older. What's the joke that it's like, I never thought I got older. Anyway, there's a couple of cute little jokes about the fact that, I look around me and all of a sudden all my friends are old. What happened? And it's like, yeah, it happens. It happens. And it's not a bad thing. I've never resisted getting older. I've never tried to hide my age. That's just not not who I am. I'm not defined by my age. I'm just kind of fascinated, like, oh, what's this going to bring? I don't know. I still feel fairly healthy. I'm not 100% what I was, 20 years ago, but I'm okay with that. I'm not struggling with that. I have a really, really, really good, loving and supporting relationship with my husband. And that continues to actually grow and deepen. We will be celebrating, let's see, tomorrow we met 43 years ago. January 29th, we met 43 years ago. And, and so it's been, I mean, we had our challenges, like I think everybody does, but overall it's getting better. It's kind of like once we hit 20 years, it was like, okay, now it's just consistently. The first 20 was a little, that's, if we had any issues, it was more just dealing with our personality differences, but we've grown up together.
Right.
And he loves the journey as much as I do. He loves to learn, he loves to grow, and he encourages me. He actually encouraged me to get started as a writer. I'd taken some college courses, but nothing extensive. And he just said, what would you do if you could do anything? And I was like, I think I'd like to write. And I guess the rest is history, because here we are.
Can you remind me, so did you start writing 12 years ago?
No. I actually started writing like around probably 35, 40 years ago now. At 65, I was in my early 30s when I started writing.
Okay.
And part of it was, in the beginning, it was sort of related to my real estate career. I was dismal. I was not a salesperson. I'm still not a salesperson. I can't see talking people into things they don't want, or maybe don't want. It's just not part of who I am. So real estate was not good for me. So I started writing about real estate. I kind of developed a business that supported real estate, and wrote about real estate for years and years.
I want to point out, I love how you found a way, like a partial solution. Like, instead of it has to be this or this, you were like, what could happen here in this middle space?
Yeah.
And you honored your wiring, and I just love that.
Right. And actually, it was kind of an idea of Tom, my husband, because he was like, okay, well, you're writing. I actually tried my hand at a couple of romance novels, because I thought, how easy is that? It's like anybody can write a romance novel. Well, apparently I can't. Because I didn't. So that didn't happen. But then I started writing for real estate. I was writing, as a marketing pieces. And then I started writing for escrow companies. I don't know if you do it the same way, but it was used as a promotional piece. Yeah. And I knew what marketing should look like. But I didn't have to do it. All I had to do was write this marketing piece like it was like ghost written for companies. Okay. And I actually did that for like over 20 years. I had that business, and that business actually supported us pretty well for those years. I did really well. I always like to say I was paid to learn how to write. And I was paid to learn how to write on demand too, because I had deadlines and I had to follow them. And I had customers and clients that counted on me to put out their materials, and I had to come up with it. And I did. And I realized you can do it even when you don't feel like it, even when you're like sick, you can still write. Maybe not your best stuff, but you can still write.
Yeah, I hear you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And
I also started, I'm a big fan of Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. Yeah. So, pardon me?
She has a new book out, I believe.
Oh, does she? Oh, I'll have to check that out. Back in the days when I was writing my promotional materials for real estate, people would ask me what I did, and I would automatically go to the accepted title, I'm a real estate broker. Well, my husband would laugh. He was like, you haven't sold real estate in for like ever. That means that's not who you are. You're a writer. But I didn't feel like a writer. I had some of that imposter syndrome or whatever, because I had training or background. Sure, I had a business and I did it, but it didn't feel like I was a writer. Julia Cameron, by starting morning pages, which I did 30 some years ago, I started them, and I still do them. And Julia Cameron helped me find my voice and helped me accept the fact that I am a writer. And it took quite a few years before that really sunk in. And now morning pages are my therapist. They're my confidant, they're my inspiration, they're, all those things that she writes about. I don't know if you've done morning pages.
I haven't actually. I haven't. I just, of course, I hear about her work all the time, and so many people just have benefited so much. I'm curious about her. I can't remember the title, but I just listened to her on a podcast just this week about her new book. And that one, I can't even remember why, but it drew me and I was curious about checking it out. So I do say this is just a fun aside because I did not know we'd be talking about writing like this in this way. I have a friend in Texas and she writes romance novels, like kind of more like clean romance. And she is so good at it. And her name is Kirsten Oliphant, and you can find her at createifwriting.com. And she has I've watched her evolve in her writing career. And she just kind of found her way into this type of writing, and just like she's I don't want to focus on the money, but she's making a lot of money. She has worked so hard, but it's just fun to watch her evolution. And I find her so inspiring, even though there's nothing in me that wants to write romance. I just am in awe of her and her spunk and her, how she uses her strengths. And she's an Enneagram 5, I believe. And
that's interesting. That would be really interesting to get everybody's Enneagram and figure out what I so admire people who can write with humor. I love reading humorous blog posts or articles, but I try, and I'm dismal. I'm way too serious. I think I'm much more lighthearted in person, but my articles are kind of heavy and serious, kind of, but I can't change. It's just the way the words come out of me, I think. So it's like,
I think do you find that the more you kind of grew into yourself, like even with the right sizing, it sounds like you developed more self-awareness and more self-acceptance and gave yourself permission to just kind of be who you were. And what was my train of thought again? We were talking about writing. Oh yeah. Do you feel like that helps you just like love your writing more too? Because it helps, don't you think it helps quiet the noise of, oh, they're so good at this, and ooh, I wish I could do that, or oh my gosh, like why should I bother writing after they have written this beautiful thing? Which, have you struggled with that? And do you find that the deeper your kind of self-awareness and self-acceptance, that you're able to just write more freely?
Yes, I do think that. I actually did an environmental blog for like 3 years before I started Smart Living, and I've been doing Smart Living. In June it'll be 10 years that I've been doing it. And I think if anything, what keeps me going is the idea that I want to do something new. I want to challenge myself with my writing. And in order to do that, I kind of have to stop that noise coming from other people. Because if I'm paying attention to what other people are doing, or what I think they do so better, and I wish I could do it, it messes me up. So it's helping that as time goes by, it's really helping me to just stay focused on, no, I want to grow. I want to focus. I want to become the writer that I hope I can be, to the best of my ability, whatever that might be. But I can't be like anybody else. Then it would be like a waste of time to have two of us. So I do feel like, I do feel like that's important. I do, however, I put little challenges out there for myself. Like I said, I want to do an audiobook this year. I want to do another book. 5 of my books are all actually books that I use. I use articles from my blog because they are pretty well thought out, kind of like yours. You do long posts. You don't do these short little blippy posts that some people do. I try to research them in most cases. I try to write longer blog posts. And when I do that, they usually cover, well, certainly the SMART, the SMART categories, but a couple of other categories like the positive aging, things like that, where it's easy for me to compile similar blog posts into a book. And
Right.
then, because I figure, let's face it, not everybody wants to read the blog posts. A lot of my audience is actually women, closer to my age. And some of them don't like to read online. They want to hold the book in their hands.
Yeah. And then you can underline it and mark it up. And some people are so offended by that. Like I have this book I bought last year, and I don't usually rip a book. Okay, I'm going to be honest, I don't usually, but the best books ever, if they stay on my shelf, they're probably like marked up. And I want somebody to take my book one day and like cry and laugh and underline and maybe like some tears drip on, like, I don't care. It's just like, love it, use it.
Oh, I know.
But this person, she took offense for the author because she saw me, and it was just like I had just desecrated a holy land. Listen, lady, like, words are meant to be like gobbled up and tasted, and like, I don't want a book that just sits pretty with dust collecting on it. I want it to be like, show that it has been lived with.
Yeah. Oh, I agree, Krista, completely. I'd rather my books were completely all marked up than left. Yeah, you can tell they probably haven't read them if there's not a line in them, is my motto. So it's like,
and like one of my daughters, she loves her books. She won't even let me read her favorites because she says I wreck the spine. I'm like, no, I'm not wrecking it. I'm just opening it. Like, she's
really?
just, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how she reads without like any crease. She just like, anyway, it's funny. But I'm a deep feeler, and it's like words are, they're just definitely one of my top 3 things. They change me, and story changes me, and yeah, it's just, I'm grateful for every human who has had the courage to put their voice out in some way, whether it's in a quilt or a painting or street art or whatever it is, that act of creation and letting yourself be seen in some way so that I can learn and grow and we can grow together. I just think it's beautiful. So
now with your coming book, do you have a publisher already?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Who is the publisher?
Homebound Publications. They're an indie publisher. Yeah. And I won't share too much, but I'm in a season of life that's pretty hard, still dealing, like walking through grief and trauma and stuff. And they were so compassionate and willing to give me more space and flexibility, and also it's creative freedom. Like, this gets to be my book, and they'll help me and support me in making it better and all of that good stuff. I don't think I could have signed with somebody else, because right now I can't operate in a hustle mode. Like, so
Well, I do think it's important. My first book was published by Findhorn out of Scotland. I don't know if you've heard of Findhorn. Anyway, which it was very serendipitous. I had been writing obviously for quite a while. This was before blogs. I had been writing quite a while, doing lots of different forms of articles. I had submitted a bunch of articles and had them published in magazines, and I was doing pretty well with that, and I liked it. And that's probably a friend who was also published through Findhorn referred me. And so I had my first book, and I was over the moon. I was so excited. With that first book, you tend to think you're going to be famous, which was a joke on me. It was kind of a culmination of so much in my mind. And Findhorn, well, I hope it sounds like your company's way behind you, and that's really, really important. I discovered that, as so many authors discover, that the marketing is really up to you.
Yeah.
And they did a little bit, and that was it. And this was before ebooks, so it really didn't. In fact, it's out of print now. You can still find some copies here and there, but it's out of print, and they never put it online. my husband said I should try to get my hands on the rights and put it online
Mhm.
myself. And then
It's built into my contract that rights revert back to me and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, I have the rights, but then I'd have to redo it and put it in anyway.
Mhm.
And then my other book is a real estate book. I actually wrote a book about selling a home yourself, kind of like a FSBO, that's called in the US at least, but how to sell a house yourself without a real estate agent. And again, I was very suspicious because I had the result I'd had from my first book. And he was like, oh no, I'm going to spend all this money promoting it, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, that's good because I'm no good at marketing my books. I put them, if they're there, that's great. And same thing happened. Actually, then that's when the market crashed. That's when the real estate market crashed. And if we'd hit the market beforehand, I think it would have been a success. That was the hope. So anyway, after that, I just decided to heck with publishers. I'm doing it myself because then I can control it. And even though I'm not a marketer, I can still, I can do as good as they can.
Yeah. Definitely. I was willing to self-publish too. Like for me, if I hadn't been able to, without going too much into this, like I was willing to walk away because for me, one of my core values is freedom. And a contract can scare me. I can kind of start like, no, like, so I had to work through my own emotion and then negotiate with them and realize, okay, what would I need to feel safe? And then just ask for that. And, they can say yes, they can say no. And, but I knew that I would just be okay with I don't need a contract. I could just put my words out there myself. And also you talked about deadlines, and kind of one of the ways that I work with my wiring is to create some deadlines for myself, because otherwise I will procrastinate. And in this kind of life, it's hard. And I would happily just hide under the covers, like at least half my life right now. So I choose to build things into my life that are really meaningful and values aligned, and also create some natural deadlines. And that works for me. And so I preferred actually in this season, I just don't think I would write it. I don't think it would. I started this 5 years ago. I don't think it will ever go into the world right now unless so anyway, so I'm happy about that. And I think that the fact that we can self-publish now is just lovely. I love it. It's just.
Well, actually, it sounds to me like you've worked it because in your head, you were willing to do it if you had to. So you've got the best of both worlds. You get to choose that, right?
There's always trade-offs. Like exactly. I do think you can make more profit sometimes self-publishing and stuff like that. Like there's some, but I think for me, this is not, it's also about I need a learning curve in my life. Like I learned years ago that I require a learning curve in my life, or else I kind of fall into depression. And I was doing that, like this cyclical kind of doing that until I remember my son was about 14 and a light bulb went off. I was like, oh, this is what's going on. And then I could just embrace it and say, oh, this is just like, I'm not doing this for any other reason except this is part of who I am. I need this food for my brain and my like heart and all of that. And if it's too much pressure, I can then have like, anxiety that, so, there's this window of tolerance, but I like it and I need it. And so I lean into my strengths. And one of the ways I do that is by just saying, I thrive with this. Like I need a learning curve. And it's part of my excitement about aging as well, is this idea that like, we have no idea how many days we get, but I just think the journey is, God, it's harder than I ever could have imagined. And also there's so much good stuff. And I just want to keep living fully. So
yeah.
Tom, it's Tom, right? Your husband?
Yeah.
It seems like that's kind of what your take on life is too. And I appreciate that.
That's one thing. Sometimes Tom and I'll sit around talking about, we just don't understand how some people, I'm all for leisure sports, the seven in me likes to go out and have fun. I love to go dancing. I like to ride my bike. But if I can't balance that with learning and challenging my brain, it's just like, how many hours of television can you watch? I mean, it's just like, that just makes me, it makes me, crazy. It would definitely make me crazy. So I get that. One nice thing about doing a book, I haven't, when I do my books, this is like my latest book. When I do my books, they're not very big, as you can see. They're usually about 20 blog articles. I do introduction and a conclusion and everything. And Tom does my covers. I'm very happy with the covers. But every time I do it, they change the software on creating your own book. So every time it's a learning experience. Now they're kind of refining it so it's easier, but you still have to relearn it if you don't do it constantly, you have to keep relearning it. And like I said, with the audiobook, I haven't done it, but I know there's programs online I bought myself a nice microphone and now I'm going to learn how to do an audiobook. It's like, I can't imagine not wanting to try to figure out things, not things that are like, I'm not going to take up calculus and, start teaching that or anything. That's not my interest, but things that I'm kind of interested in. Why wouldn't I want to keep exploring that? Why wouldn't I expect to, when I get to the point of age where I can't, right, either by choice or biology, if I can't do that anymore, it'll be time for me to check out. And I'm okay about that. I don't, like we said earlier, it's not a morbid thought. It's just of realizing, how do I want to spend the rest of my life? And I want to spend my life learning and growing and evolving and becoming, all those adjectives that really suit me. We hardly got to talk about right sizing though.
I know. Well, you know what? And it is time. I think we can direct people over to your site though, because you have like whole resource lists of blog posts and everything in your books. So please, Kathy, tell us about the 2 books that you're offering in a giveaway. I forgot to mention that at the beginning.
That's okay. The first book is the right sizing book. It is my most popular so far. And I'm very proud of it. It's a nice little book. You can find all these articles online on my blog, but I've also written a whole bunch of new, because I still continue to write about right sizing because it's such an interesting topic to me. But either way, if you'd like to have the book, please mark it up though. I'm hoping you would. And then my most recent book is I call You Get to Make It Up. It's the idea that we really do influence our future, that our choices and decisions can dramatically change what happens to us in the future. We can't change the world. We can't change some stuff that happens, but we always have the ability to change our mind about stuff that happens. I believe not always easy, but I do believe we can do that. So that's my latest book, and I would be happy to gift them.
Okay.
Both of them, I will mail them either US or Canada to whomever you decides is the person, and just give me their contact information and I can do that.
I will. And I just on the spot, I have to make up, how do you enter this giveaway? If you want to enter the giveaway, I would love for you to, wherever I share this, whether it's on YouTube, Instagram, whatever, I'll just upload it to some different places. In the comments, tell me maybe one of the hardest things you've gone through as you're learning to right size, and one of the things that is exciting you most about this idea of right sizing your life. So whoever's listening, couple questions, just respond to. It can be 2 sentences, or it could be like, give me half a novel in the comments, and then I'll enter your name into the giveaway for these 2 books. So
I hope you share the answers to those. I would love to see what people say, right?
Okay. We'll see if we get responses.
Yes, and I hope, I know it's the last minute. I hope I got across that the idea of right sizing isn't a sacrifice. What it is deciding what works for each person individual. There's every different way there is a person, every different way there is to right size. It's not just about decluttering. It's not just about, it's even not just about sustainability, but all those things working together to give you the best life possible.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for reiterating that. So smartlivings365.com. So the numbers 365.com is Kathy's blog. And she, in the search bar, you can search right size living, I think. And I've done that, and it pulls up all these articles. So go dive on in. And Kathy, are your books available in like lots of places online where people can?
Amazon and Barnes and Noble have them.
Okay, great. So,
and there's a link on the webpage too, if you want to link through to Amazon. So that's the only link I have on there.
all right.
So.
Thank you so much. And I feel like you already shared one final thought, but just one more opportunity. Is there one more thing that you want people to know, or a word of encouragement, or just something that we haven't touched on that you
probably, I think in your notes you mentioned something about what would I tell my younger self kind of thing. My younger self is, I would just say, trust yourself. My word of the year is trust. And that's really something I'm working on, is trust myself. I really believe there's that benevolent voice inside of everyone that really will guide us in the way we're supposed to go. Maybe not always the easiest, but definitely the best way for us. So trust. That's the word I'll leave you with.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks. Thank you.